Well, welcome everybody back to KC Happy Hour, episode 92. It has been a busy few weeks here for this summer. It will continue all the way through. We got the Texas Sprint Racing Series up this week at Amarillo Kart Circuit. The AMA USA Grand Nationals continues to get more and more exciting. $25,000 of cash prizes potentially up for someone to walk away with from that main event in 2 weeks. The Stars Championship Series at Pittsburgh has their first ever Pro-Am Charity Enduro. Today, SuperNat's 26 entry went live just a few hours ago. And of course, last weekend, the US Pro Kart Series all wrapped up the third round of the championship at Indiana for the Indiana State Grand Prix. And tonight, we want to break a lot of that down, talk a little bit with the industry, but more than anything, give you guys some insights into how some guys were able to go as fast as they were. Specifically, a little bit of love to Speed Concepts Racing. Austin Garrison getting a huge win in X30 Pro. Kyle Wick with a big win in Pro Shifter for GFC, having their best month to date. Sweeping the weekend at Salt Lake City, Utah, getting the main event win at the US Pro Kart Series in Indiana. That's huge for them to have two big races in the month and to take it all with that manufacturer, with that team, with an alternate engine manufacturer in the TM that everyone's been using. So there's a lot to break down out of the last week. There's a little bit of drama. Always, that's worth talking about and explaining it. For that reason, Braden Eves is not on tonight's show, but we do have a TJ Koyen and Matt Johnson joining me here tonight to break everything down over the weekend. TJ was at home while everyone else was playing in Indiana. Matt was up here with me, and both of us have obviously made it back home safely. So, Matt, from the event itself, this is only, I guess, event number 2 or number 3 for you California guys at NASH Motorsports to be over at the US Pro Kart Series. 280 entries, a lot of people. From your perspective, and how was your weekend all around with everyone that you had and being in Newcastle again?
Well, Newcastle's always been a special place for me. So regardless of everything, it's always nice to come there. It's just a nice change of scenery, breath of fresh air. But what came along with that was the USPKS race in itself. I think that there's a lot to be said for the series. I think they got a lot of momentum. I think they're doing a really good job. It's kind of old school racing. I really commend the whole staff for that matter. They really do a great job of making you feel welcome. They really do their best to make it seem like they really care. They really do their best to provide as much attention within reason that they can. I really admired the way that the race directors handled some of the things. I feel like some penalties were definitely needed and assessed, and then there were other times where maybe they could have. In reality, I just think bottom line is the way they took care of things and the way they addressed them and handled them and the decisions they made for the most part, I think were for the most part fair. I think they give you a little bit more of a personal approach. It's nice to see that when something comes up, they take the time to come and actually approach your driver and or your tent, kind of get both sides of the story and make the best decision they can. So that was cool. You see some old faces there in the staff, which I know from obviously my years in the sport. So that's neat too. Always a change of scenery is fun for everybody, especially when you're treated very well. So hats off to USPKS.
Yeah, this weekend, Blake Hunt as the head race director, it's a guy who's raced for, more my generation, but they've got a decent mix of people. I think that was interesting, Matt, when you had mentioned it, and we had talked a little before the show, was, that the concerted effort that Blake made and Jason Ludwig, they're making laps at the end of the day for whether it's protests or whether it's race decision calls kind of to go out to you guys, right? That seemed to be a big impact for them to the teams, was coming to your pit versus, having to file a protest and wait for them around or, not always talking directly. Those guys were making themselves a face of the event, no?
Yeah, absolutely. It's cool. Like I said, they really make themselves available. And they make a conscious effort to, like I said, try to make the best decision with the information that they have in front of them. So I think that goes a long way. And then as you make your way throughout the paddock, the rest of the staff, like I said, is extremely welcoming. You have them. It's cool that the drivers and some of the teams maybe get an email at the end of the weekend with a little, suggestion box, if you will. Hey, what do you like? What don't you like? I think that stuff goes a long way, and I think that's part of what, like I said, has generated some of the momentum they have. Now, for me, it was only my second event. I know the team's had some presence there as far as NASH goes since last year, and I've always heard great things about the series. Like I said, there's familiar faces there from back in my time in the WK Manufacturers Cup days, which, like I said, is cool. It's just it's fun and it's appreciated, I guess, to see that you have some guys there that are from the old school and have a pretty keen understanding of our sport. And like I said, they all seem to want to be there. They're enjoying their time, contributing to the event. So it was cool for sure.
Now, this weekend was record entries on the books at 280 plus. Granted, that's a little bit inflated, as TJ, you and I both know. Haven't been around the series for a while. This is the first time we're at 8 total classes, so you can take that number a little bit at face value, knowing that we had 20 pro shifter drivers that weren't on the entry list back in 2022 and beyond. I mean, all the series in the country have either at least stayed the same, if not grown, since the pandemic. And that's a factor of our sport. We're seeing more of that year to year. This year was a 5th round added to the U.S. Pro Kart Series. In 2024, we're going to see a 3rd SCUSA Winter Series date added. So we're going to have more racing there. And in general, with the Stars Championship Series building more and more momentum, that's also now getting into sharing that same pool of teams, at least, even if it's not fully the same drivers, race to race, event to event. So as a guy that's somewhat inside, somewhat outside, again, your dealings are a lot different than, let's say, myself, or even a guy like Matt being at home, but at the club level with coaching, doing the helmet painting. So you interact one-on-one with a lot of different people at different levels of the sport. As we look to 24, I mean, I don't know what's kind of come to your mind from a guy somewhat involved, somewhat not involved, but an ear to the ground on seeing everything that's come out over the last few weeks, scheduling wise, and looking at the entries too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good that entries are good pretty much across the board in the country right now. We've seen the growth, like you said, so that's really cool to see that the sport rebounded after the pandemic, better than ever in some cases. And USPKS, just like Matt said, they do a great job. They continue to grow. And it's going to be interesting to see how much pie there is here on the east of the Mississippi for all those big series, because Stars, obviously, they've got momentum too. They put on a good series, and they, as they continue to grow too, they're probably going to draw more from that national touring pool of drivers. And then SCUSA pushing the Pro Tour further east, and then also more races in Florida. It's just going to be a lot of races, and I just hope that this region can sustain all that, and nobody drops entries or anything because there's too much racing going on. So I think it's nice that we have all these races. It's nice that the sport is doing so well, but I hope that all the series are being mindful and careful not to saturate it too much.
I think that's going to make it tough, right? There'll probably be some where you're spending like 3-4 weekends straight, which is kind of the norm anyhow. But when you're talking about national stuff and not really including many test days or time to test, it's definitely going to provide its challenges. I don't argue that. So I have to agree with TJ. I think while the sport does have its momentum, and I think it's only springboarded off of COVID, we just got to hope that it all sustains, like he said, and we're not diluting any of the other series.
Yeah, I think cautiously optimistic is probably a really good description of where we look into next year, right? Like, nobody really knew how big we were going to rebound. I think looking back, it makes sense. We were one of the first outdoor sports and just outdoor activities that could get back going. And that spurred, I think, without a doubt, between F1 being one of the few Netflix series that already had seasons out when the pandemic hit and everybody watched anything there was to be on Netflix. That was a big boom. It wasn't necessarily the docuseries on its own. That was good before, but then by the pandemic, having everyone watch everything from, again, the Tiger King to, even the one show, Outer Banks, which was a show more towards my generation and below, shows that kind of are getting drowned out now. But in that era, racing was at a peak, and then we've got an outdoor sport. So everyone was kind of out of the gate not knowing. I think looking back, we're like, wow, it makes sense why we grew the way that we did. And, eventually the supply chain is getting better. It's still crazy. And, the war in Ukraine isn't helping. But all in all, it was like we've come out of that since that summer 2020 era. Each year, it's like, okay, we're bigger. We're able to do another race. We're able to have more entries. We're able to, watch the regional guys grow, watch the club stuff grow. And there's going to be a ceiling at some point, one way or another, right? I mean, at minimum, we know there's a ceiling in terms of budget. At a certain point, people can't do it, or if they can, normally they're only going to do it and choose to do it for a few years before maybe they go to a sexier form of motorsport, like car racing. And that's always been the case with our sports. So we can't just rely on, someone being able to afford endless amounts of races, and we can't, rely on millions and millions of people growing if we're not still also fanning the bottom as well. And when we have so much at the top, it hurts the bottom. I mean, Matt, Seth was one of the first West Coast teams that I think really more so in the era of Winter Tour and Challenge of the Americas kind of going, wanting to be at both. Seth, along with Rollison, having an East Coast truck and trailer setup. And now we've seen more and more guys from the western half of the U.S. migrate east and or set up a setup over here. Ryan Perry Motorsport moving to Charlotte, relocating from California. And that kind of creates a rift. And while the eastern half is doing phenomenal, and I think we're going to have no issue sustaining probably one more race next year and having 3 major series here. It may not get much bigger entry to entry per event. That being said, Rock the Park, unfortunately, this weekend canceled up at that area, and that's not been a major event, and the Rock Sonoma, or not Rock Sonoma, but California Rock Challenge that Andy's tried to put together. That whole area is in such with the top guys, I feel like leaving. There's good positivity on the grassroots side with what Donald Durbin's doing over at Prairie City with the Northern Sprint Kart Series, but it seems like as the top has followed what's been okay to keep the top stuff going from the shops and the teams and the series side over here, it's now the middle transition ground from a 206 or KA regional guy up to a national level is kind of away, and we're back down at the base again. I mean, is that a fair assessment for a guy that's been kind of over in that region as well to say?
Yeah, I mean, the deal is, well, I want to touch on one thing before I forget. The one thing that we can touch on as far as all these series and all these extra races, well, not all these extra races, but the few extra races we'll have next year and the schedule being as packed as it is, you'll not only have to factor in some budget, but you also have to factor in some time, right? And I think on the bright side of that, or on the other hand, rather, it's going to force, in a sense, the rest of the series, in terms of all of them as a whole, to provide a product and an atmosphere and an environment that people want to be a part of, right? Because when things get more competitive, it kind of forces everybody to raise the bar in terms of, like I said, providing a product and a service that is going to continue to retain that client base. So I think that part is good for our sport. And I think that's great. We'll see, like I said, kind of how things shake out by the end of next year, who can do what and who can't, and what that does to the big 3 or 4. But I'm actually excited in that regard to maybe see, like I said, some of these guys, like I said, bring their best effort in terms of an organization. So I think that can be good. As far as the thing that's going on out here, we're definitely in a little bit of a lull. It's no secret with Cal Speed going away. As far as Southern California goes and the club stuff, for us as a business, we, by this time last year, we probably have done 20 plus club races between the 2 or 3 clubs that we participate in out here. Now with Cal Speed gone and LAKC, I think they've only had 1 or 2, very minimal participation type races. It's definitely affected the business a little bit, and the culture down here in terms of the karting population, or whatever you want to call it, is definitely going through like a weird time. And I mean, one of the things that we face in California is there's so many different things to do, and all kinds of, we're basically a season round, or an all season type of state, where if you're playing an outdoor sport, you can play all year long or not. And then there's also a variation of things that a lot of the kids like to do. So we're definitely going for a little bit of a trippy time. as far as California goes. And yeah, with the rock thing being canceled, it's not a surprise to me because we do have a lot of racing going on, and some of these national guys that have kind of made the national stuff their priority, if you will, whether it be budget or time, versus some of the, next tier down. It's obviously, made an impact in that regard.
I think the one other positive thing, at least to take away, not only with more races that are going to feel similar in terms of class structure, tire compound, tracks we race at, and turnout kind of all being the same in terms of differencing. They'll all have to be, doing a really good job on, making the customer feel welcome, staying on top of high level officiating. When you get a bigger and bigger grids, it gets tougher and tougher to handle. Really, it's really easy to run an event with 100 entries and keep everybody happy so long as they're not upset more people aren't there. It's a lot harder to manage 40, 50 go-karts on the racetrack, which again, I was puckered up in the booth watching 52K seniors take the green at Newcastle this weekend. And, I messed with your dad a little bit about it, TJ. I can't lie, of the weekend format in the lineup and Mark II of running that many on the racetrack. I think I've beat it into the ground a little bit that it always is. The racetrack can fit, but short races with a big field is just tough to manage. But the one other good thing I think that is good to come out of it is I think that even we're seeing it now at this point in the year, there's a lot less test weekends happening because we're racing so much. So to a degree that, room for more events that everyone's going to was somewhat always there in the last 2 years because we saw this massive growth of, teams going to test and, basically run their own mock race weekend just without a race. We didn't see that this weekend, partially by circumstance because Newcastle, to fit in everything on their schedule, had a vintage race the weekend before. But even Utah didn't see a lot of guys test. There were a lot more people focused on the Stars race at Newcastle. And I don't think that's a bad thing because I'm not the biggest proponent for that extra test weekend for one specific race. So if in a way, by having more races, it kind of dilutes the specialness a little bit of each big race, but a product of that is we're not seeing as many guys come the weeks before. And as long as, there's Thursday practice for tracks, or as long as there's just excitement about the racetrack and they come out good on the deal to host a big race there by hosting 3 races instead of a race and a test weekend and a club race, that's the real other part of the formula that needs to make sense. Because you hear that here and there throughout the paddock with tracks that need to get, a little bit of a better deal, I think. But that's a topic that I think I want to hold on for this week. But I do want to get into as we get into the racing, because there was a lot to talk about. Was we've got some clips pulled up. TJ was able to watch from at home with our coverage. Matt, you were able to be there to watch a lot of it. TJ, this clip I know you wanted to specifically spearhead, so I'll let you kick it off as we'll put it up on the screen. This is the finale of the KA senior main event that had a really good battle coming all the way down to the line. So I'll go ahead and cue that one up right here, and I'll have you walk us through it.
Yeah, so part of the reason I wanted to talk about this one is I just want to, we're going through this from a driver coaching perspective. I'm looking at all these races and kind of seeing, what I would do in this situation or what I, where a missed opportunity might be. And it was right about this time in the race where you could kind of see that Ferris is just starting to push Braden kind of throughout most of the track. It looks like Ferris is maybe a little bit lower geared because he struggles a little bit out of the tight stuff, but like through all the fast corners and down the straightaway, he's just riding Braden's bumper. So the only reason I wanted to talk about this one is because, I think Ferris did a good job here to go when he went at the right time. Because, if you're pushing a guy like that all the way around the track, you don't want to have to settle this on the last lap. You don't want to give him the chance to, if you can get ahead of him and try to build the gap a little bit on that last lap, especially when you've got 2 other karts behind you, that maybe some chaos might happen here. you know, if I'm in Ferris's shoes, I do the same thing here. I go buy Eves with 2 to go instead of waiting for the last lap because you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, I mean, he didn't. It wasn't the cleanest pass there, and Shipman slips through. But you know, I don't have a I think what Ferris did was the right move there, because now Shipman's doing exactly what I would have wanted to do if I was in Ferris's position or Shipman's position, because now he's just going to drive away. All these guys behind are going to create chaos because, you know, they're battling and hoping they're going to be in second if something happens or whatever. But I just thought it was a nice example of like being in the right place at the right time, pulling the trigger at the right spot. For Shipman, like if you're in third here in this position, especially at Newcastle, it isn't the worst place in the world to be coming down to the last lap, because you know that those 2 guys in front are going to bang wheels. They're going to rough each other up a little bit, and you might be able to slip through unscathed. And that's basically exactly what happened. And then I'm also like a big proponent of, when I'm coaching, of gathering like information throughout the race and kind of planning the race the whole time, and like thinking about all this stuff. So, you know, Shipman did a good job here. He didn't press the issue too hard. He kind of rode in third, and he knew that he's got Eves up there. Eves is going to be aggressive on defense. You know that. Ferris is going to be hungry for a win because he's a younger driver, and he's, you know, he hasn't had a lot of wins yet. So you got to know that those 2 guys are going to go for it pretty hard. And then you've got Gabriel in there too. Gabriel's a wild card. He might do something crazy on the last lap. So I just, you know, I'm a proponent of planning for all those eventualities and then kind of slipping through when there's an opportunity, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a good point about, you know, Ferris sizing him up, right? Like, you know, I think seeing that, you know, at parts of the lap that, you know, maybe Eves was a little quicker, he was tougher to get to him. You know, that's like going in your mind, okay, I'm probably not fast enough. Like, I'm not all over him through the entire track that I'm going to break away. At a place like here where halfway down these straightaways in KA, you're revving the RPMs as high as, you know, it'll keep climbing, but you're not producing any more power. So unlike what we saw in X30, where Garrison was able to get away once he went to the lead with plenty of laps to go, you're not going to shake him because you're not substantially quicker. So in this case right here, you know, at this point, I remember on commentary thinking, all right, like he might have gone, he you know, might have been able to go, might not have, but in this case, he just pushed him, and he's just watching. What he did was, you know, again, like you said, for the last 4 laps, Connor just rode in second, waited around till the 2 to go, even waited all the way till the white flag coming at 2 to go. And then what caught Braden on off guard, which he mentioned in his interview, coming to the white flag, was that, you know, again, this was only the second race on a drying racetrack. So you can even see that it's damp on the inside, which Eves admitted that was the only reason he didn't go down to the bottom side. And that was kind of what gave the win to Shipman. Not only did Eves think that, you know, there's not going to be enough grip down there, still be in a drying racetrack, that Connor's not going to be able to outbrake him enough to get clear. So he's going to try and race him into the corner. That probably forced Connor at this point. You could see his hands are full lock sideways in the lack of grip and trying to go in deeper than maybe what he would have wanted. And at that point, you know, he was like, okay, wow, it's slippier, you know, more slippery down here than I anticipated, trying to hang on and forgetting to do the normal thing when you want to pass down someone's inside, especially if they're further back than in the case of Braden. And that's stay on the brake to the center of the corner to not get crossed up in the case that he did here. But by Braden kind of challenging him, going through the corner, thinking, yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to outbrake me because I don't think you've got the grip on the low side of the racetrack to get by. It forced Connor to abandon that plan of, well, I've got enough speed. I can just outrun him. I can break in, and then I can park it on the center of the apex. He had to go in deep to at least kind of hold position. And from this point on, Braden's pulling back away even a little bit outside of when Connor kind of forces him a little wide. And it just was a door wide open for Shipman. And then at this point here, right, you know, by Shipman getting clear where he did in turn 2, Connor's tires are now dirty from going offline. Braden's tires are dirty from going offline. So they're both side by side. Gabriel's just trying to get around both of them. And I did want to say on this podcast, too, on the commentary, I cut this out because I didn't think it was as important to the race win. I did call a move on Mick that I thought was really bad, and I said it was intentional over the stream. I'm a big proponent of, trying to practice what I preach when I talk to these drivers, is saying, hey, like, don't just post on social media. Don't go in the scale line and, you know, pout by yourself or talk smack between your friends when you're back at the tent. Like, if you have a problem with somebody, go up and talk to them man to man. And first thing I did once we got turned the show off on Sunday was try and go find Mick over in the pits. He'd already packed up his pit, went and found him in the restaurant, shook his hand and said, hey dude, like, it looked nastier than what it did live. When we looked at the replay, I even kind of backed down a little bit, but in that live call, I can't take back what I say. And I, take a lot of pride in wanting to feel like I fight for the clean racer when we talk on the streams, especially when it comes to senior racing. I kind of go a little easier if it's a little rougher in mini, micro, or junior, because I don't want to bully kids. But Mick's a big guy, and he was like, "Hey, dude, like I got thick skin. I get it. No worries at all from my end." But I wanted to say that publicly too, and kind of clear the air a little bit there. I don't know how many people paid attention to it or close to it, but it's important to me that deal was. I got to get that off my chest about it, and went out of my way to go and talk to Mick because, he got into the corner and it was the same deal. And I don't have the clip for it to show everybody. Otherwise I would show it, but all across the racetrack off that racing line was still damp from the previous rain that came through. Even as it was starting to lighten up on the surface, the grip was way lower. He locked up, Braden was tight on him, and they banged wheels and hopped over it. It wasn't as bad as I don't think it could have been. Maybe it was a little bit of an intentional check. Maybe it wasn't, but it definitely wasn't deserving either way. You'll never know what's in the driver's head fully unless you are the driver of calling it the way that I did. But that was a little tangent I wanted to add on. Matt, I know you watched that finish a little bit from what we saw. Anything else you got to add on that deal as well?
No, I mean, I think TJ and both you guys really called it pretty much how it was. The line down at the very inside, because the track had just gotten to be dry, clearly didn't have a ton of grip. I mean, maybe Ferris, looking back, could have rolled the corner a little bit and tried to leave the thing straight for a little bit longer, but at the same time, I'm sure he didn't want to crash Eves off the track. I think Eves tried to give him room without, basically creating a situation where they're both going to crash, and then Shipman was in the catbird seat to take advantage. So, and then like you said, they get through here, and then they get through 3, and they're dealing with dirty tires and everything else that goes along with that. Shipman gets the gap, and the rest is history.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say on this too was that going along with like sizing up Eves and kind of planning your race and how you're going to finish the race, from Ferris's point of view, like I said, I thought it looked like he was geared a little bit lower than Eves maybe. So at Newcastle, you always have to keep in mind those last 2 straights. Like you said, Xander, you're not going to break away unless something happens behind you, or unless you time it right. So like if Ferris if he knows he's faster in all those 90s there, and he's weak in the cell tower or the scoreboard corner or I-70, if it's me, I'm thinking, where am I going to pass Eves where I'm going to have the biggest chance of pulling a gap by the time we get to his strong spot? So if Eves is better in the scoreboard corner, I want to make sure I'm passing and giving myself enough time to try to break him a little bit, 2-3 kart lengths by the time we get to scoreboard. So that, you can kind of fight that without getting just driven by immediately. So that was just nuts.
Yeah, with the straightaway, with the finish line at the end. I mean, you're a sitting duck if a guy's on your bumper coming out of the last corner. So your either gamble is to be the guy in second and get the run out of I-70 to be on his corner. And even then, we saw that through a lot of the races where if you pretty much passed an I-70 in any class, which I-70 referring to the Interstate 70 that runs behind the racetrack, the last major hairpin, it's almost guaranteeing, unless you want to have to block into turn 1 and go on the dirty part of the racetrack, you're going to get passed. So it's a corner that, like, I remember coaching kids at Newcastle. That's the one turn you never pass into unless you have to, unless someone's going to go in on you and you have to go. If you have the chance to not go there, that's the last corner to go to, because there's a big straightaway for the guy to just blow your doors off right behind. And normally he's got enough time, because the pass backs you up, losing 2 or 3 tenths, that you might pass one guy going in. He might lose 1 spot. He comes back on you. You lose 3 or 4, and you've got less room to kind of get back on the racetrack because that turn 1-2 complex is so tight. So
sure does make for good racing, doesn't it?
It makes it fun to watch. It makes
it fun to watch. I mean, 2 out of 3 of Payton's heat races ended with a drag race to the finish line. It was like, it's just cool, man. And especially, obviously, if you're working with someone that's on the better end of it, when it's over, it's really fun to watch. But even just with someone in a neutral corner, when you get to watch racing that finishes up like that, and it's 3-4 wide, or the person like back and forth or whatever ends up winning the race, it's unbelievable. I mean, not too many racetracks provide that type of finish. So
yeah, and that's one of the main things I like about Newcastle is I've been racing at Newcastle for like 15 years, and even I am watching every final before mine to try to see what the right strategy is today.
Yeah,
because if there's a headwind or if, depending on what the weather's like, it could completely change how you approach that last lap.
It's definitely a unique place, and I think that's what makes it so great, to be honest.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
It's a lot of fun, and we've got, again, big moments from the X30 race that we want to get to. First up, quick word from our partners here really quickly, so we'll be right back with a little more. And as always with you guys, you're tuning in. Feel free to send in any comments or questions you got on the panel from last weekend, from some of the stuff of the news over the course of the last week. We'll be answering those towards the end of the show.
KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series, featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well, featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube. It's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to KC Happy Hour. Myself, TJ Koyen, Matt Johnson on the panel here for tonight. Let's get into X30 Pro action a little bit on the weekend. We've got two major clips queued up. Do we want to get into it a little bit with first thoughts on the race as a whole? TJ, Matt, TJ, off to you. Anything first to prime it?
It's just a good race as usual. The cool thing about Newcastle is that you can never really pull away, like we talked about. So, especially like an X30 where you just hit the limiter, so there's no way to really drag anybody down the straightaway too far. So it just provides like good racing, and it's a big wide open track with a lot of fast flowing sectors. So it's really good for like X30 racing where you can really let the X30 stretch its legs like it was supposed to. So, and I think again, it was just a really good race for the most part. So yeah, I always like watching X30, and I like racing X30 at Newcastle.
Matt?
Yeah, I have to agree with TJ. I mean, it makes for a really cool racetrack with the way that the engine runs and the power band and the rev limiter and stuff like that. Doesn't necessarily provide a situation where you need a special strategy on the gear or anything like that, but some guys do go from 10 to 11 or even 11 to 12 on the front drivers, so you can mess around a little bit there and try to shift the band a bit. But the racing has always been second to none ever since the X30 package has come around, in my opinion. It's always been the most exciting class to watch for the most part there. And I mean, the field is stacked. The X30 racing in Indy it never seems to disappoint, to be honest with you. And at one point, obviously when I got to see Turney find his way to the lead and generate that gap, I was watching the race, I think, with Christian Brooks, and I just turned around. I'm like, here we go again. But lo and behold, Garrison had, just enough to be able to run him down and get the job done. And I think his long run pace is what really got that done for him.
Yeah, I even spoke with Turney a little bit along with Ricky from KR, and they actually had a bit of an issue that kind of hurt their pace a little bit. He kind of hinted at it. He didn't really want to be super open, so I don't want to expose him for it. But it was the first weekend that with something in the final. I don't know if it was something that came up or if it was something that they were struggling with a bit through the week. He looked pretty racy in the heats, and obviously was super smart in the main. And the clip we're about to show, that was kind of one of the moments, if not the big moment of the race, which was Norberg and Eves getting into it. But yeah, I thought the same thing from the broadcast booth when he got out, knowing how good he is and how good of a package those guys have put, which is a testament to how good they are. Because I think we've said it a lot of years. There's not really been a year where that class has stagnated or maybe degressed into a less competitive field. And then looking at 2023, the number of world champion, world-class guys, top-level American guys that used to be podium finishers or even race winners consistently, are struggling in the 10s and the 15s, bracket day to day. And it's been like that for a little while, but it feels like that even more so, I think, just because there's more guys with age that are in that category of being that fast, or one day they're good and one day they're not. And normally you see that out of maybe a younger driver. You don't see that usually out of a veteran being a race winner being inconsistent. But we see that here where, realistically, any of the 20 guys have, the same level race pace or within a tenth by the time the tires are warmed up, by the time they get a clean lap in. The best laps come in so close. If you take away the one super toe lap somebody will get. So we'll go in some more in depth on the entire deal at the end. Let's talk the big moment of the race early on. Again, because they all know they're so close in speed. We see guys starting to fight at the beginning here a little bit. This is, again, we're only working. This is, I believe, 16 to go. So this is lap 3. Norberg gets through to the lead right after Eves had gone through. And then we go in. He defends a little bit. Not really. It was pretty open there. Pack behind was fighting a little, but at this point, I think that whole top 10 still felt like they had reached to the top 3, so they weren't killing each other yet. But here, perfect example of what I said a little bit earlier. Eves goes by an I-70, and you're just asking. In this case, it was Ramos going by, but then Norberg got enough to get a run. Goes from a 1 position loss for Ryan to a potential 2 for Braden. And here we go, side by side, through the corner, on the risk of hanging on the outside, and then they come together. So let's go back through it a little bit. TJ, I'll pass it off to you first. Break down this moment right here.
Well, obviously Ryan goes to the inside here. Nice clean pass. Nothing crazy there. What I do like here is Ramos just kind of chills. He knows that these two are going at it. So like I was saying in the KA race, you're trying to collect information the whole time you're out there and plan your race. If I'm Ramos, I'm seeing this. And now I'm especially seeing this here where Eves is going to go right back by him. So now you all of a sudden know in Ramos's position that Eves is not going to play ball. He wants to lead the race. So you have a couple options. You want to get rid of Eves, so you want to go by him. But then Ryan makes this crazy move, which props to Ryan. Nothing wrong with this. But 3 wide up the bottom, you don't see that very often. And Ramos kind of goes, all right, I'm bailing out of this. It's getting too crazy. And then I've been in this position here where you're passing somebody into this final corner. And if they're going to hang on the outside, I mean, they're just really asking for it because it's such a fast corner and that curbing just ends there. So you're really, really putting yourself at huge risk trying to hang on the outside. I know Eves doesn't want to give it up because he knows Ramos is right there. He's going to lose 2 at least if he doesn't get back, at least stay even with Ryan. But it's just a tough situation. Like you could see Norberg gave him a little room. He gave him kind of enough room. Eves just kind of ran out of curbing there on the outside. So it wasn't like Ryan shoved him fully off the road and took the line away from him. It's just so hard to go through there side by side. And I've been on the inside and I've been on the outside of that same exact situation. And if you're on the outside, you just have to give it up if you want to salvage your race.
Yeah, it was funny to hear the interviews. Braden said in his interview that he tried to back off, seeing Ryan was on the inside to let him by. Is that Brian brakes so early that he didn't, like it looks to me, again, being this far back going in, like he looks over, checks him, sees he's there, and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to let him go. And he turns away there at this moment. I feel like he's wanting to back off a little more. And you see the closing rate of Ramos. I feel like he closes up to Ryan and then has to kind of hit the brakes. So then it's, he felt like Ryan purposely kept him on the outside where he couldn't get in. Ryan, in his point of view, he's like, well, Braden's just holding the outside on me. And both guys have, even Braden said it on, being on the losing end, like, fair play, I'm on the outside, kind of run me off. That's just the unwritten code that we've talked about on this show a ton of times. If you want to hang on the outside of the corner, you do it at your own risk and hopefully at the mercy of the guy passing you. What was weird about it was, again, like you said, there was space here because the curb was there. And Ryan, didn't fully close him off. Like, at that point, you've got to go. It was, I think, like a halfway on both ends, right? Like, Braden wanted to let him go. He's already halfway back at this point. Maybe not halfway, but close to it, about to be halfway back on him. And Ryan didn't want to give him the space, but kind of did. And so you have this, almost half pass on both sides of both of them halfway in the door, through the door of I'm going to fight this move in Braden's case, or I'm going to back out, or halfway in the door of Ryan's case of I'm going to push him wide. No, maybe I'm going to give him a little bit. And so neither one knew, is there going to be enough room? Is there not? Should he back out? Of course, Ramos right there. So, Ramos is a little more to the left, probably anticipating Braden to let off and want to get alongside. And Diego being second in line through, he can't run Ryan off. That's not kind of part of the code. It's only the passing guy. So it's just an awkward encounter. And then by the positioning where the karts were, it's Ryan's right rear, Braden's left front behind each other like this. And then boom. And right there, bent Ryan's kart, destroyed Braden's front end. Game over for both of them. Matt?
All that really was just hard racing, plain and simple. No, I don't even think that either one of them meant to get into each other or really drive each other dirty or wrong. My opinion is this: Norbert goes down to the bottom. They get through here. Braden makes the move. That's all good and great. Like you said, he doesn't want to play ball, and that's fine. At this point, Ramos gets the inside. They both don't have the best drive off the corner, and the easy no-brainer move at the kink, if you want to lead, is to cross him over. So he does that. But then when we get down here, knowing what we know from the KA race, which was just a couple races before, there's not a lot of grip down there, and he doesn't want to go blowing past the corner or probably drive Braden off the track intentionally anyway. So in my opinion, he kind of, like you said, backs the corner up, maybe leaves the thing straight a bit longer to keep it underneath him. And then unfortunately for Braden right here, he runs out of racetrack, and when the car bounces off the rumble strip, it's just like, timing and place, to be honest with you. He didn't mean to turn into Norbert, because that wouldn't have benefited him one bit. And I don't think Norbert was trying to run him out of room, because even at the point that they make contact, he can't even see him, I don't think, based on the fact that the, left front hits the right rear. So that was just to be honest, for lack of a better word, a shitty deal for both of them. And yeah, was it a little bit early in the race to be fighting for the lead that hard, especially with knowing that they, in hindsight, that they're towing the pack up to him? Maybe. But that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't really blame either one of them on that deal. Norberg is eager to win. He hasn't won since Rock the Rio. He's obviously been close. He's had some tough weekends, but I can understand his position. I mean, like I said, to me, that was a no-brainer and an easy crossover at the kink to try and get back to the lead. So as far as what happens right there on the exit before two is just really racing and an unfortunate situation for Eves and Norberg.
Yeah. I fully agree with you, Matt. I think you're exactly right. Ryan was backing it up a little bit to prevent what we saw in the KA race, where Shipman slipped through. I think Ryan was, taking his time to get to the apex to make sure that Ramos behind him didn't cross both of them over. And then they just end up side by side. And like you said, Braden obviously didn't turn into Ryan. He just bounced off of that dirt mound there. And
yeah, that's what I got. 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, and like you said, in a sense,
like the bounce right here on the curve, that's what sends them into him. Like neither one turns into each other, right? Even anything
right. And Ryan's giving him room too. I mean, you can see he's not trying to run him out to the grass, because he's still leaving at least a half a car's width right there on the exit. But and Eves, like you said, he almost had no choice at this juncture but to try and hold the outside, because otherwise he was going to get smoked by 4, 5, 6 guys.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is. It's a bummer, really. He was fast all weekend long. Like he said in his interview, he had really good pace. I mean, the thing was working and all things were right for him, and he had a good shot, but it's just it's too bad, really, because it was just racing. In the end, I can't really say I blame either one of them, and that's just being fair.
Yep.
Yeah, and and then this is really how Turney got the cap. I was curious about it, and what was really cool this weekend is we were able to start playing around with our instant replay feature a little bit, even going to cameras that weren't featured directly on the live. So while we saw live in the moment, the camera stayed on Braden, the other camera we had up on the hill got to get a really good angle of Ryan trying to just hang on for dear life. I think this was from the broadcast that would already cut so late, but here's a look. So he hangs on. This is how Turney gets around both of them, over-unders, both Ryan and Diego. And then at that point, the gap's not super big, but Ryan goes kind of low to block from Diego all the way down, back in the dirty part of the racetrack again with already dirty tires. He said he bent the go-kart in the process as well. Didn't go good in the left-handers, which he would have got eaten up out of here, and he kind of does. So that's how Turney gets the gap and gets away, which was a cool little extra feature. And then, of course, from that point, it was all about, exactly what you said, Matt, thinking that Turney's got it. This guy who's somehow been able to do what Ryan's been able to do, what Braden's done really well in a few years prior of see the chaos, and you look at when the dust clears and you're like, how in the world did that guy go from like umpteenth to second or to the lead or to the first or third? This year it's been Joe, and he gets through.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like, someone like Joe is a perfect example of what I always say when the cream rises to the top, because in my opinion, he wasn't much of a threat all the way through Sunday morning. I definitely didn't. If I would have had anybody picked to win, he definitely wasn't in my top 3 by the time Sunday morning rolled around for whatever reason. They just didn't quite seem as quick and have the pace that they've had at some of these other races I've seen him run in. And so, like I said, lo and behold, here we are 4 laps in, and look who's leading the race with a gap. I mean, it's just, it almost seems to never fail. But then on came another veteran karter, and he seemed to work it out. So, I mean, the race was really cool to watch for me.
Yeah, let's break that down here with Garrett. Or what were you going to say, TJ?
I was just going to say that, yeah, once Turney got out front, you're like, oh boy, is he going to be able to do this? But I think when you got 13 laps to go, these guys in second and third, if they're looking around and they're seeing where they're at and who's behind them at this point, this is where people start to get cooperative at Newcastle. Is you got a long race.
Yeah.
You see a guy way out there and you're like, we were as quick as he was when we were all battling here. So if we work together, we should be able to catch him again. So at this point,
I've always appreciated Diego Ramos's racing IQ as well. I think he's a pretty mature, also in my mind, a veteran driver. He's I can sit here and talk about how good he is all night, but that's besides the point. I think what we saw, like you mentioned, was a little more cooperation, and these guys knowing what they know about Newcastle, kind of being forced to either, hey, let's work together and try and make something happen, or we're just going to fight for second. And it was cool to see him work together. I felt like, personally, I thought Diego had done a pretty damn good job all weekend long. It seemed to me like he was one of the better guys throughout the heats and everything about trying to play his cards right and manage that high-speed game of chess. I could tell just like when we saw him back out in the 3 wide deal, he definitely seemed to be the most poised and have the most patience. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I thought Ramos played it really well through all the heats and the final and everything. Just knowing when to give it up, knowing when to go for it. He kept his nose.
He ran clean all weekend long. I thought.
And he wasn't the fastest go-kart, but he was able to be up in the mix for the win because he was playing it smart. When stuff got crazy, he was like, "All right, you guys handle your stuff. I'll just slip through and I'll keep it clean." I thought he did a good job.
Yeah. And to me, that's a guy that I don't know if I would have pegged him for that probably 3-4 years ago. I think in some of his first races coming to the U.S. when he was a younger guy, we're used to seeing a lot of, stereotypically South American guys, be a little more wild. It's the rental car equipment. They don't own it. They don't got to take it home. They're used to running on a lot worse stuff sometimes back home. And Diego, like Mateus Morgado's, not a kid with a bunch of money. The only reason he's getting to drive right now, a kid's working his tail off as a driver coach in Orlando and, is basically a PSL staff member. And luckily with that deal, he's able to race as well, which is really cool. But seeing the maturity of him on track his last 2 years. And I mean, he was fast at Newcastle last year. Like there's some guys now that we're seeing, I feel like the depth of field go up. Some guys fast some weeks and other weeks not bad, just not as big of a factor. I mean, this was the first weekend of the year. Diego outran Morgado by far. Every single session he was better or at least even. Whereas most of the weekends this year, he was just a tick off or right there with him.
I thought he was pretty damn good in Texas too.
He was good at Texas. Yeah, he was in the mix at Texas. That's right too. Yeah,
these last, to me, the last like 3 races, the Texas Grand Prix or whatever you call it, the Utah race and this last one, he's been a part of the conversation. And you don't know if you can always put your money on him to win or not, but he qualified on pole this weekend. He, to be honest with you, in my opinion, because he's been working so damn hard, has actually been better than Morgado these last few races. And they're tight, so he's learning at the same time, and he's only getting smarter, older, and wiser. I think Diego Ramos is on a little bit of a roll right now.
Yeah. Yeah, super cool to see for him. I mean, he's really nice kid, and again, I don't think he's had any bad run-ins with anybody. The closest he had, again, like, and I think back the last time I can think of something really controversial with him was him and Morgado a year and a half ago, kind of going at it, at the Winter Tour race at St. Petersburg. But this year I've seen even year to year, I think he's been smarter. I think it was a humbling thing when he kind of got dropped from REM. And with PSL at Road America last year, now a lot of people know that was a one-off. That was a tryout, and you better prove that you're a smart guy, a fast guy, a hard worker. And I think he's really, again, like you said, been on a bit of a roll right now. And that's cool to see. I mean, it's cool to see the hard work pay off for anyone. But
Yeah,
definitely kind of a nice guy
deserves
winning.
it. He deserves it. He's a good kid. I've gotten to know him pretty well since about 2020, and he's a good kid and he's a hard worker. Like I said, he's got good racing IQ, and right now in this moment, he's checked in. So let's see what the future brings for Diego. I mean, we'll just have to see.
Well, speaking of hard workers, our Florida man, Austin Garrison, hell of a weekend, hell of a year for Austin, by the way. I mean, this year, most opportunities he's gotten to drive in good equipment consistently in terms of gaps between races. And he even said it at the Winter Series that when he won there and who was so good there, it was him, Ryan, and Turney, on that second weekend, head and shoulders above the field. He's like, dude, I'm still rusty. Like, I get a little more warmed up and we're going to be really good. And he hasn't been able to do everything, but he's still been able to do more than what he's done in years past, which even then was impressive. But then here, this race, I mean, dude was hooked up. And Matt, you guys kind of working closely with the Speed Lab engine relationship for NASH and Speed Concepts. You have a bit of insight as well. So I want to pull this up and you can dive into first to explain a little bit of how he was able to go as fast as he was.
So one of the things that I noticed about Austin and the go-kart that he was on this weekend is he had some of the least amount of geometry in the front end, maybe out of anyone in the whole damn paddock via Ackerman. So it's my opinion, like when you watch him go through two, or you watch him go through some of these high-speed corners where the bank is and you kind of dip in and out of the corner, with the outside tire turning less than everybody else, you absorb the least amount of load and you probably absorb the least amount of shock, if you will, as you go through those bumps. And what goes along with that is some high-end rear stability. And most of all, as long as thing not understeering, you're going to probably have better tire life because you're obviously creating less friction and heat on the fronts. As long as you're not understeering on exit, like I said. So whatever else they had going to make that combination work, because it's definitely a unconventional setup, if you will, but not so much for Newcastle, because at Newcastle you're going fast. You kind of have that on top of the track sensation there. And if you watch, like right there where he went through cell tower, if you will, that's where the lack of Ackerman maybe isn't so good. Now, while Turney hung a wheel, if you kind of really watch the go-kart, it's the rear's just kind of following the front around. It's not exactly the most rotating go-kart through the tight stuff, in my opinion. It kind of just looks like it's a little lazy there. However, when you go across the slurry patch that's in that same corner, again, we're not inducing as much load, so it's springing off, a bit better once he can get the wheel straight. And if you watch, like I said, through there at the scale corner, which is 4, he generates that little bit of a gap because, in my opinion, he's rolling a little faster through through the center and popping off with a little bit more of acceleration, if you will.
Yeah, at Newcastle, it's so important to take as much scrub out of the kart as you can without giving up the front end, because it's all just 90-degree fast corners. So if you can
with
get
the banking and the bumps in mind too, and I think, like I said, when anytime for example, if you've got more caster in the go-kart, the caster is going to do everything it can to keep the tires pointed straight. So as you absorb those bumps with the wheel turn and stuff like that, it's a bit more violent, wants to essentially kind of twist the wheel out of your hand, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, when he's going, right there, he kind of missed the corner a bit because that was right after, I don't know when that was, but he fucked that up. But like through 4 right there in the scale house, it was really good. Turney uses the curve there. That didn't help. But look right here where he develops that gap, because you can see Turney's thing kind of hits and goes in a little harder through there, where Austin's is a lot more smooth. And where I stood, which is by kind of where they do the podiums right there as they're coming off of 2 where Eves and Norberg made contact. He was so good through there because he was able to keep it so tight and absorb the bump better than everybody, and it would just rocket off of there into 3. So, and if you listen to his interview, the thing only continued to get faster and faster and faster. So as the tires are falling off and some guys may or may not be losing the rear, he's just cruising along, probably not even pushing all that hard, as he can't obviously attack the front, or attack the corners as hard with the lack of front. So I think that he probably finished the race with the least amount of tire temperatures, probably the rest of the guys in the top 5.
Yeah, you made a good point, Matt. You've got all this tar or slurry in the center of the corner in a lot of the corners there.
The place is unique.
You can just hook that and ride it like a train around the corner. So if your kart isn't the most responsive or doesn't have the most side bite, you can use different parts of the track to get it to start to work a little bit better. And then, like you said, in all those 90s, where there's tar in the middle or whatever it is, when you go through there, all those corners are like almost flat out or flat out. And if you hit that banking in the center and you've got a bunch of front geometry in the kart, you're right, it will try to jerk the wheel out of your hands there. But if you don't, and you can just stiff arm through that corner, it's going to fly on the exit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I thought I can see right there. And I also, in one of his heat races, he was actually able to gap quite a few people through the middle and off of the exit of 4 there. And I thought that was pretty cool to watch. Like I said, anytime you can do what he's doing and keep the front tires on the thing, you're not hurting at all, because, I mean, it's less slip angle, less everything. So my hat's off to him for making it work, because it's personally, like I said, it's unconventional when you look at the the general tuning window of OTK. It's typically speaking pretty simple. I would generally race with like a stock setup there, but Austin, with his driving style and maybe how fast he is on the wheel, I mean, that not only obviously helps slow the steering down for him to make it more comfortable to drive, but like I said, it also creates rear stability and keeps the tires cool. So it was cool to see him make that work.
His kart looked easy to drive.
Yeah, I mean, like, for sure, right? Because there's no load in the thing whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't know why he can't hold on to that thing, being the fisherman that he is. I don't know what he's catching, guppies or what.
I mean, it's cool even like bringing it up like this, like watching this, and I should have slowed this down, so I'm just kind of pausing it. But playing through like turn 4, you compare him, Turney almost looks like his kart ricochets and like double bounces just from the front once, because there's this little dip in the center of the corner, right, where the karts get a bit of air, and there's that little bit of rhino patch there. And you watch Austin's kart go through it, and it looks like it's on top of the track, just glides it no problem. And Turney, you can see like, again, it like stiffens up and it almost like kind of compresses for a second time center off, like bounces there, and then still as he's coming out to the outside curb, it by just having that stiffer bump through it, it's like still suspending. TJ?
Yeah, if you don't get the kart rotated there and then just brace yourself through that center bump, you can easily bounce right to the outside curb and scrub 2 kart lengths worth of time right there in that one corner. Even though it's an easy 90-degree flat out corner, it has a lot of weird little eccentricities to it, like with the banking and the rhino lining and how it is. So going through that corner, there's been times where I've been racing there, and it's a passing zone into the next corner too. So if you nail that corner and you just hold that outside arm straight going through that bump, and you're able to keep it down on the track and somebody else bounces up in front of you, you can just dive to the inside pretty easily there and drive right by.
Yeah. And if you don't get the right exit there, or the thing's all the more violent over the bump, you're usually hanging a wheel on exit too. So
and you're cresting off that corner too. So the kart's getting light as it's already sliding from that bump. It can be deceptively tough to get through that corner, right?
Yeah. And I think, like we said, I mean, I think with him being able to get the good exit out of there, it just gave him that much more of a cushion, if you will, getting down into that passing zone in 5.
Yeah.
And I think the only place he really paid the price was maybe, the same thing like you said, TJ, through the double right, there's the slurry patch, so you can kind of use it if you're fighting for a little bit of grip or turn in there, if you will, or load. And then I think the worst it was with the settings that he had was through the cell tower. But as long as he really doesn't get past going in or doesn't have too small of a gear, it's probably not that big of a deal. So
I mean, you can even see
Turney was trying to give it everything he got just to hang, because he could tell that they missed it.
Yeah, like his lines, I mean, looking closely, and granted it's a side view, it definitely looks like Garrison's got like he's setting up more. He's having to arc a little more, not having the front right through here. Like you can just, if you look closely, it looks like he, to me, is closer over by the left-hand grass going into this double right. And then looking right here, judging off that seam, you know, he's out just a tick wider and a tick earlier than Joe, having to set up for the corners more, having to consistently. I mean, Joe, you know, probably wasn't anticipating, you know, carrying that speed and running as wide as Austin was. So that's why he dropped the tire. But even then, Austin was like that every lap, like literally every inch. I mean, you could see the curbs on the exit at Newcastle when they put them in to try and add some driver skill are, you know, banked downward. You know, it's so you can see how much he is, because that cart is hanging off the edge, and even he like almost kicked up dirt there.
Yeah. He's just got a later rotation because he's got to feed the thing so much more wheel. So at the same time, he's trying to unwind it and get out of there and minimize, you know, the lack of momentum. So
and that kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier with the KA race too, where Garrison looks like he's set up really well for the fast corners. And yeah, he's giving up a little bit in the tight stuff, but it doesn't matter because he's making up so much time in all the fast stuff that Turney has one sloppy lap like that where he drops a wheel, and that's all it's going to take for Garrison to break the draft and then just continue to pull away the rest of the track.
Yep. Yeah. And he said, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, he said the thing just kept getting quicker and quicker. So anytime you see that, you know, you've got the chassis right, because especially speaking nowadays on the red, most of the time, virtually almost or essentially, I should say, in almost any go-kart race, you want to try to set that thing up to go best at the end. But with the product of racing we have nowadays, and the fighting as gnarly as it is with the pushbacks and just the etiquette and everything else that goes on with the races, sometimes you got to set up to make that thing come in and maybe run its best at lap 13, 14, you know, as opposed to 15, 16, 17, 18, or even for that matter, lap 8, 9, and 10, you're going to go quickest, just so you can kind of get out there and get yourself in a secured track position. So it was cool to see him be able to do that. And then really, like, it's hardly ever do you see anybody checking out in X30. So for him to, I think, like I said, I think with the lack of heat in the tires at the end and everything else they had going on, that's what provided the ability for them to do what they did. So it's cool.
And man, I know you got to dip out of here, you know, relatively soon. And granted, we're on time for the segment regardless, but that's a good little segue into kind of the last bit I wanted to pull you guys on. We had a really cool podcast last week at the track with Eves and with Race Liberante and Chase Jones, kind of talking on race length. And, you know, that right now, to me, you know, what was a big point that I thought was kind of funny, a little bit comical in the booth, was every guy we'd interview through the weekend. Especially we did a lot of interviews during Saturday heats before and after. We got to about everyone in the top 10, 15, and X30 at one point or another. And the consensus was always the same. Nobody wants to work together. You know, everybody wants to fight for seventh. And, you know, we didn't see that as much, right? When we got to the main, we saw a little bit of it at the beginning with Braden and Ryan going at it. But, you know, Diego had no problem following Austin for a little while. Joe and Diego even tried to follow him for a little bit. And further back, it was somewhat the same. But it was double the length of the heat races that were just all out brawls for the win. And like you said, you know, again, right now, knowing that the fighting's there, you're not even able to kind of try and experiment with setups that are going to be better for the long run and really show a really good driver that can drive a go-kart that is maybe a little bit slower, a little bit tougher to run the same fast lap on, but manages tires a little bit better. And one big point they, you know, pointed out for the pro classes as well, especially for a guy like Braden that is recently out of the car game and recently trying to get back in, you know, is they're looking at double the length of races, whether it's tin top racing or open wheel racing at 40 minutes. We're running 20-minute mains. We're not really getting that tire overheat, tire deg at all. And he said from the mindset of those races, right, you can let a guy go on lap 5 because if he's running full bore, he's going to burn his stuff up by lap 15, and you'll easily clear him and yard him by lap 25 if we're on a 30-lap main. But in the same point, I thought those guys were kind of silly and missing the whole issue. It's not that nobody wants to work together or doesn't want to work together. I mean, the truth of the matter is someone's got to go backwards if you want to go forwards. You know, we can't all win, right? So if someone just got passed by 3 guys, then you pass them. They're thinking, I just got to get back around you and I got to go back forward again. But The bigger issue, I think, is like you don't have the opportunity to let a guy go and have some give and take because we're running such short races and we have been for such a long time. Next year, I think there's an opportunity for all these series that are going to have such similar races at similar racetracks with similar classes to maybe try something different and do a little bit longer sessions where maybe by being a longer session, we'll see less of this chaos in the opening few laps and more, maybe a little more strung out races is going to happen of it. But I don't think we're going to see it to a bad degree because we got 20 guys that legitimately week in, week out, if they hit it right and the luck goes their way and they don't crash, can run at the front. So if you put some tired egg, we might get down to 10.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion on something like that is the reality is that's a conversation that can go on for a pretty long time because, I mean, how much more do you lengthen it? 30? Do you go to 40 laps? I mean, I can remember back in the day in the Constructors' Cup with Formula A and stuff like that, they'd go 40, 42 laps, and that was cool. But the difference back then was we had maybe 5, 6 run groups max, or 4 for that matter, which obviously, you know, changes things in terms of the time slots you have available throughout the event. So I think that's a whole nother can of worms that I don't have time for. But I'm not opposed to it because I'm always one for long races and tired egg and fall off because for me personally, I've always favored that and preferred to kind of let the stuff all sort itself out. And like you said, have that ability to let someone go if you need to, knowing that at the end of the run, as long as your track position is good enough, you're just going to pass them back anyway. But things are so much different now and we have so much going on. I don't know again. And then you got to also keep in mind, like I said, we can sit here and talk forever, but I got to go. What's that going to do for broadcasting? What's that, you look at like the NASCAR and all the other stuff and they're trying to shorten it. Granted, those are going from 3 to 2 hour races or whatever, but I think it's going to involve a lot of research and stuff like that because you got to look at the attention span of the viewer and all that other stuff. Unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword because while the racers maybe want to see things sort themselves out, the fans, if you will, want to see action-packed, racing. So that's going to be a tough one. That's a sharp razor.
TJ?
I mean, I've had this debate a lot of times over the years, and you're welcome to go talk to my dad when he sets the timeline and try to convince him that we need to do 40 lap races, and you can see what he says. But I think it's fun to do long races. I've done them before. Like Matt said, back in WKA, I can remember doing 30, 35 lap finals at times, and it was fun. I think it would be cool to do it as like a special race, maybe. So not every race is 30 minutes long, but maybe during the year, you have 1 or 2 of the 4 or 5 that are long races, and it kind of mixes it up, and maybe different people come to the front with a different skill set. I think that would be cool.
Yeah. So where we ended up, Matt, is we figured like, kind of a split schedule and really only doing it in X30 and maybe in shifter. And I don't even know if shifter fully needs it at the numbers they have now, but junior, you definitely don't need it. If you look at the X30 junior race, the top 3 guys got away and it was a strategy race all the way to the end. The mini and the micro stuff doesn't really need it. And KA, you could kind of argue for it, but I would argue against it right now. But where it would be is right now, the only classes you could maybe cut laps and not feel pushback is probably X30 Pro and shifter. Those guys are running those races for exposure and for cash money. And so, and usually to be a branding mechanism for the team, if not for themselves. So for them, where we ended up was if you ran an identical schedule to today, which every class gets about an hour of runtime in the day. And Friday, 2 20-minute hot pit free practices. So you'd have some strategy in it to try setups. That would work out because in an hour window, you could do the 2 20-minute sessions with some pre or some post race on the front and the back end. Qualifying, maybe a heat race on Saturday night, maybe not. But again, you would be cutting these guys in total, their number of laps on the weekend, to allow for some more TV time, to interview more of the field, hype the race up a little bit. And Sunday, those guys wouldn't have a warm-up, and they would straight go into just probably a 30-lap main, just maybe about 5 to 10 more than where we have to get a little bit more of that tired egg and let the field settle out a little more. Nothing crazy, but the only classes I think you could even consider doing it are the classes that are begging for prize money, are dependent on prize money, and are dependent on the exposure. And that's not the case with the majority of the micro, the mini, the junior, and even the masters guys as well. Those guys divide their entry fee by track time. So you can keep the identical schedule the same. And then from a TV point of view, we've been wrapping our heads for a long time. These 8-hour, 10-hour broadcasts, they're not good for anybody besides when you set specific times in them for people to watch. So it's a limit for fans. But if we had 8 a.m. to 3 was everybody else, and 3 p.m. to 5 was 2 pro or a pro and a semi-pro division, it's much better for TV because then I've got one window for the generic fan to tune in. And in general, what we've noticed is when we toe the numbers by that, the algorithm benefits as a whole. For example, this weekend, to close it off, this weekend we peaked somewhere around the 500, 600 number for the viewers during the third or the second X30 heat race. I can't remember. But in general, the average for most of that day was around the 400 number. Now, that's not only 400 people watched it. That's the peak any minute metric. There's 3. There's the any minute. That's exactly how many guys are that second. There's the total number of unique viewers. There's total number of views. We're talking the peak any minute. That shows you how many are watched in that session. Last year, in comparison, that peak any minute was around the 300 number. So year to year, it's going up, and the average was around 200 still. So while there's a 20% uptick on the pro guys, when you focus on them and we promote them as we have, it has brought the entire product upwards. So it was just something different, and I was curious what we got. But like you said, we got a lot to get into, and we got a lot more to let you guys on. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought before I let you both go. But closing thoughts for a bit of self-promotion. Matt, I'll have you do it first before you dip out. Where can they catch you? What did you want to give a tagline? Mike's all yours for Smoking Fast MJ and Nash Motorsports.
All good, man. You can find me on Smoking Fast MJ on Instagram. That's my handle. Send me a message, whatever. But I just want to give a shout out to Peyton Westcott. She had a great weekend. Not quite the result we wanted as far as finishing 10th on Sunday, starting 3rd. But she did a great job. I thought we made some strides this weekend. I think she played the heat races out really, really well. She's starting to earn some respect. And I'm just really proud to be a part of that program. So hats off again to Austin Garrison. Thank you, Kart Chaser, for putting on a good broadcast like always. And most of all, thank you, USPKS, for putting on one of the better races I've been to in a long time. But I got to go. I got to get to the airport.
I'll see you, man. Thank you, Matt.
All right. See you. Thanks.
All right, TJ, for you, closing thoughts, closing plugs. Where can they find you? What do you want to touch on?
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I don't really post much on my KorsaSport Instagram page, but you can go to my KorsaSport website if you are interested in booking coaching lessons or anything like that. Otherwise, you can find me on Octane Visual on Instagram. That's where I post all my helmet stuff. And if you have any karting stuff you want to talk to me about, I'm always on the forums on Kart Pulse. And I get a lot of messages on there that I try to reply to all the time. So, yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, TJ, as always, thanks for coming on. And don't worry, I did bug your dad. I will be bugging your dad. I always love to. A shout out to Tim Koyen for the U.S. Pro Car Series heading up the NAKL license system. I went up to him and I gave him some grief because X30 was right in the middle. And I didn't want to bother Matt too much. But when you have X30 and shifter as the peaks, KAC, and you're right there close, then on down to everybody else, can you give me them towards the back so the whole broadcast builds up to it, because it goes up and then it goes down. And again, I'm doing that because those guys are going to peak no matter what. It doesn't affect their numbers. I want to give all the classes as much love as we can. So I gave him a lot of grief, not a lot, enough. And he gave it right back for putting X30 in the 4th seed and shifter in the 8th seed. He was like, well, I gave you shifter. I was like, all right, you gave me half of my presents I wanted on my Christmas list. So I'll live with that.
Yeah, I've lived with that for 30 some years.
So, but yeah, I just, it made more sense from those guys where at least then they could use their pros in the pit, and they could also use their mechanics that they would have to only pay for the pro into the end of the day. Similar Supernats with the split schedule where guys kind of bat both ways on the deal, which would be cool. But, I think think I wouldn't want to, you know, like Matt's saying, I wouldn't want to take away the action of the other classes. Like X30 Junior, the top 3 traded the lead like 10 laps in a row while they were gone until the very end. It was, you could have cut or Mini half the time. We can cut that race 10 laps short. Same deal is going to happen. 2 guys push away by 2 seconds, and then they just wait till the end. So you don't need to do it everywhere because it won't happen everywhere. But it was, we had never really gone through the solution. We went like 2 hours on the show, and then by the end we were like, man, you know, we really never thought this way. So
yeah, it's interesting too, and there's a lot of new considerations to take into how you schedule races or all this stuff. If you have Kart Chaser there to provide coverage, you know, there's things that you got to take into consideration that most kart series have never in the history of go-karting had to take into consideration. And with the way social media reaches these days and stuff like that, there's all these other things going on to grow the sport in the background that nobody's ever thought about until the past couple of years. So
yeah, it's not always fun to be the first guy to have that conversation because nobody feels like you got value when you bring it to them. But
we appreciate you, Xander.
It comes around. I have to say, I mean, it's everyone's been really appreciative. I don't want to make that look anyway, but I mean, again, I think it probably wouldn't be a conversation before I started doing this stuff. I mean, I think like you, like, you know, if I wasn't in the premier classes, if I was a kid growing up, I was kind of watching them on the fence line and stuff like that. But now, you know, it's the beginning of, all right, like, you know, we've kind of conquered, I think, at the race weekend level. You know, every club karter in America knows of us. And if they have the time, they're only tuning in. There's 5 or 10 racetracks alone right now and indoor facilities that are starting to have our streams playing, which is amazing. Yeah. So we've got those guys and they just love racing. Now we need, you know, a product like what Peacock does for IndyCar, NBC does for NASCAR, where, okay, now we're looking at that 2-hour window for time and for the stuff people really want to watch and doing a better show because, you know, one of the points I made last week, I would have loved to have Oliver Hodgson interviewed and promoted all the way into Utah to show the process it took J3 and CompKart to get the win. But in the format we have right now, where we're not an afterthought, but there's so much racing for every class, it's impossible to do more than just a winner or maybe a top 3 round of interviews. So you can't build that storyline up for that guy running 10th or 15th, whereas F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, they're able to do that with the added time. And you won't take time away from a mini dad or a micro dad that's like, my kid needs as many laps as we can. And we need to be, you know, I mean, Tim knows this as well. Like the lunch breaks are a tough balance from a series promoter because like you want to take care of your staff so you get compliments like what Matt said, that the staff is super nice, but staff's not going to be happy if their lunch breaks cut. But I can't tell you how many times I'm walking around the pits and the dad's like, should do something on the broadcast during lunch, or why do we have a lunch break? Why don't we go on track the whole day? And it's like someone else is working the entire sessions that you're able to sit and wait. So it's a balance. I understand. I understand it fully, but thanks as always, buddy. I appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
With that, I got a little more for those of you still watching. Right after this segment, I have Jackson Gardner, awesome friend of mine, really good friend of the show, going to come on. And we are so excited when we talk about TV stuff. We talk about things that we're doing with the sport. And again, talking to promoters to try and, you know, do stuff that's totally different, which is not always the easiest conversation, but it's taken us to a lot of new places and a lot of good heights. Next week, I am really excited with the Stars Championship Series. They jumped at this idea to try and do something with a little more engagement in the local market with indoor kart racers and a lot of club racers. There's a Pro-Am Charity Enduro we're doing. Jackson is a big piece of that puzzle and working with the Stars Championship Series with his company, with REP as well. And so having him on, having myself to chat about it is obviously it's something that we're involved with as a project in Kart Chaser. I wanted to give a little bit of clarity there, help promote it, and show that it's hopefully a sign of something that could be really fun to come with. So stick with us, guys. We'll be back right after this.
Looking for the perfect vacation spot and a family fun weekend where a race breaks out? Look no further than Karting the Coast. Our 10 race schedule is already well underway, with stops at NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans and Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi, where our podium ceremonies are on the beach. We know how to have a good time and put on a good race, and all that we're missing is you. To find out more, visit kartingthecoast.info.
Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show, and welcome to the show, Jackson. Appreciate you waiting in the green room. As always, we run longer than expected, but I appreciate the time.
I know that game. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this. It's going to be a fun week next week.
Yeah, let's break it down a little bit. First of all, can you lay out a bit of the event for everybody? You'll be able to being the one in the trenches as well, can explain it probably even better than I can.
Yeah, so, you and I spoke and Joe and just kind of had these ideas that kind of tie to the broadcast thing that you're talking about and just engaging the outside community. For those of you who don't know, I'm not originally from karting. My kid got a go-kart and started racing, and it changed our whole family dynamic. And I just want to bring everyone into the sport that I think that we can. I really enjoy engaging the outside community, seeing new kids come into karting and new people follow the sport. So this idea came from kind of that passion that I know you share as well, Xander. So so at Three Rivers Indoor Karting on Friday evening, the week of next week, I guess, 7, 8, 9. That'll be is it the night of the 7th, Xander? I'm not looking at my calendar. Yeah,
night of the 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, Friday night.
Yeah, so at 8 p.m. we're doing a charity enduro. We're going to have 9 pros. That's including Joe Janowski as well. We haven't got his video yet. I can't wait to see it yet. So anyway, you're going to be able to sign up for teams sorry about this. I need to get a script.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can reach out to the pros that we have. We got Vincenzo Saraceno, Annie Rule, which I think she's got her team filled up already. We got Alex Stanfield, Brandon Carr, Josh Conker. Who else am I forgetting here, Xander? You got the list in front of you?
I do, yeah. So Gavin Bailiff for Trinity Karting Group from Pro Stars. We have, let's see. I'm forgetting one more. I know I'm forgetting one.
Brooke Knockman.
Brooke Knoxman.
I got the list to load there.
There you go. Yeah. Brooke Knoxman, Brandon Carr, Alex Stanfield from OKN Stars, Vincenzo Saraceno, Josh Conker from Pro Stars, Talon Yockel, and Annie Rule from Pro Stars from the Magic Camp, and then Gavin Bailiff from Trinity Karting Group and Pro Stars. So all a mix of top contenders in the Pro Stars class, in the OKN Stars class, along with a Stars team with the Mr. Stars Championship Series and Mr. NKA Joe Janowski leading an officiating team that's going to be racing on the racetrack at the same time. Oh, now lose you. Yeah. So
there we go.
Got all those guys, guys and girls, and then it's each team is raising a minimum of $300. It's all benefiting Mission for Miracles charity. Basically, anyone can get a spot onto the team. In fact, we're trying to hold all the spots for the teams to locals at Three Rivers Karting, locals at the pit race, event, and then the format of the event, which is it's going to be an enduro, so they can have up to 5 total drivers, including the team captain. So there's 4 slots, up to 4 slots per team. There's going to be a minimum of 5 or 6 stints with mandated pit stops for the electric cars to switch. It'll be a 30-minute race. I think we're doing either a 6-minute qualifying where the captains qualify the car. Guys can go earlier in the day to practice it at Three Rivers, right?
Yeah, so the captains are going to qualify, but they're not going to be allowed to start the race.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah. So the captains are going to qualify, but they won't be allowed to start the race. There's going to be all kinds of different crazy ways to shake this up. Where you're going to be able to donate to add laps to a team, to your favorite team, to give them an advantage on Open Fender. And that will all be kind of information that comes out as we get ramped up to this event. So make sure everyone looks out for that. But also on the broadcast, I think it's going to be a great time for people to pull up Open Fender. We're going to be sharing the link for the Mission for Miracles page that has all the drivers on it. If you want to support a specific team in the middle of the event, you can go and donate to that team, which is going to be super cool, raising money for a good cause. It's going to be really cool to see the community come together, just have a good time, bring some people in to the pro circuit and race some indoor go-karts. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and to see people just goof off and have a good time racing go-karts.
And I think it's good to, explain a little bit of kind of the thought process behind it. Obviously, this is a really cool way to start introducing charities and to do a really cool fundraiser in the sport. But in the conversation that we had in coming up with this idea, right, this goes right off what we were talking about before the break, and that's expanding our audience on the streams for the sport, to go beyond the into sport karter and to get them to come to the racetrack. One cool thing Joe's doing is anyone that donates and buys a spot on a team or donates over a certain level will get a free pit pass to come out Saturday and Sunday to the races at Pit Race, to come out, hang out with their driver they just got to meet and race against or race with the night before. There's already trash talk going on between the drivers. A lot of fun. And then from a TV side, right, this is an hour to hour 15 window for us. So even for us from the side of the event, having interviews during the race, the other big thing of being an enduro, there's less on-track action as the spotlight. It's shared. It's storytelling, similar to IMSA, where you've got the leaderboard. We're going to interviews just as much and exposing personalities of the drivers. But again, it's that connection. This is a connection event at the end of the day, right? It's a connection of us to the indoor community, us to a great charity and a great cause and Mission for Miracles, and then also people to connect to the stars of our sport, where they get invested and want to follow them.
Yeah, well, we already have people that strictly have only raced indoor signed up to want to do this, that haven't engaged even with the club, which is super cool because it's connecting many different levels of go-karting. It was kind of puzzling to me when my daughter and I first started karting together. We started the indoor stuff, but we were well aware what was going on with Pitt, and we were going up there and running 206 as well. In the wintertime, we'd run indoor series, and they were almost like completely separate worlds. And they're so similar, and it's people that just love racing, and to bring those ideas together and start to tie the communities together a little bit, I think is going to be pretty important for the sport moving forward, especially from a marketing perspective and a participation perspective. And I hope that everyone that comes to the event on Friday night that isn't already participating in Stars over the weekend takes those pit passes and comes up and brings their family and sees the event and sees what the pros do every day on the track. Because I have said it 1,000 times, and I'll continue to say it, watching a pro shifter kart race is one of the most impressive things you will ever see in motorsport, and OKN as well. I mean, single speed 125 stuff is incredibly exciting, and it's impossible to break away in a lot of these races, and there's constant entertainment. And it's kind of blown my mind that this sport lines up so much with the same competition of supercross and motocross, which is what I grew up with, and not seeing people want to come watch it. And I think that this is a good way to start touching people that aren't involved yet, that haven't seen the pro side of this, that may be going to indoor leagues, that maybe even racing the club races. And then hopefully we can even reach further than that, all the while raising money for Mission for Miracles, which is a great charity that I've done a lot of work with in my music career. They do a lot of work with spinal cord research, the story of John's daughter and what he was able to accomplish through just his diligent work. When she was injured, she was paralyzed from the neck down, and he was able to he put his head down and started making phone calls and traveling and finding programs to get her in. And she's back to 99.9% healed. She can walk around. She's like completely healed. It's one of the most amazing stories ever. And this was from a tumbling accident that she had. And he made it his life's mission after that to get people that don't have the resources to be able to find these programs like the Miami Project and tons of other things. The list of things he can go down that, if he's still the guy that if there's a medical problem in my family, I call John like, hey man, like, where do we go? What do we do? Who do we call? And he's just incredible. And I know it's the right partnership for us because he loves racing. He's working with a lot of people in the NASCAR side and having some talks in IndyCar as well of how to partner up with his nonprofit. And he raises tons of money every year for this. And I'm excited to see him come to a karting event because he's been trying to get me to do something with this. And it's really cool to see him finally come in and help us put something like this together.
And, you know, I mean, speaking to, you know, yourself personally, right? I mean, you've been a crucial piece in not only putting this together, but putting a lot of marketing and racing deals together. And I think that while this audience here on Happy Hour, right, I'm hoping that everyone tunes in, supports, is able to come out to the event as well. But we've obviously got a lot of drivers on here, you know, with Kennedy, you know, being able to raise all the money she's been able to raise this year as a driver. Your you know, MO and what you've been on for the last, you know, couple of years has been marketing and relationships and sponsorships. And we could do a whole other episode on that. But can you kind of, you know, I guess put in a little perspective how important it is for any of these guys to not only want to be a part of these events, but, you know, the value of as a driver right now, like, you know, running pro, running OKN, like what's the point of going out and making your own time to go to this extra stuff, and how can they kind of maximize their, you know, reach?
I mean, I tell Kennedy all the time, the most valuable asset you have is your network, right? And this is a great way to build your network. In music, it was always going out and networking with people, playing shows, but then staying afterward and meeting as many people as you can. And as a pro driver, for the health of the sport and the growth of the sport, I think it's really cool that these drivers are doing this because it's going to be incredibly beneficial to them to network with drivers that aren't on the pro side of this and on the traveling circuit side of go-kart racing. This is, you know, you think, oh, I want to be a professional athlete and I want to be on TV and grow my, you know, my reach and my marketing capability, but it really starts with you shaking hands and engaging with the community with the thing that you love. And engaging with people that love that as well, and sharing that common ground and sharing your story and engaging with people and just finding a way to connect. And what a better way to connect than getting a go-kart and race with somebody that has that same passion. And maybe that pulls them along to race Stars next year, right? And it pulls them along to maybe get their first 206 and go race the club at Pitt. And it continually grows the sport. And then they tell a friend. I mean, that's the most powerful marketing there is. You know, Kennedy picks on me because everywhere we go, we get back in the car and she goes, "You're always cracking a deal somewhere." And it's like, it's not always that I'm cracking a deal. I truly care about this sport. And I think it's important to get these drivers in a position where they can use that platform and where they can share their passion for it and show where you can go and what you can do with it, and become a part of this incredible community. So, you know, if you're looking to do something fun on Friday night, July the 7th, you know, check out Kart Chaser's last post because all the drivers are on there. I won't mess up the list again. And shoot them a DM or shoot me a DM. Even if you don't know who to pick and you want to participate in this, shoot me a DM on Instagram at @TheJacksonGardner, and I'll find you a seat. You know, it's going to be probably roughly between about $100 a driver, but all that money goes to Mission for Miracles. And it's going to be a great opportunity to share a seat with some fast people and get on the Kart Chaser broadcast, which some people that race every weekend at some of the pro stuff don't always get to get on the broadcast. So this is going to be cool, and it's going to be a really exciting show, I think.
Yeah, so that's I think a good point to end on with everything for next week. So super cool event. A kudos to Joe, to Christian, to yourself, to Mission for Miracles, to stepping up. I mean, you brought together, you know, also we've got Open Fender, that'll be the fundraising platform for Mission for Miracles as well. So, you know, make sure to check out Open Fender. They're a big part of helping make this possible. And that's where you'll be able, if you want to go and get familiar with their website and the event pages and everything, that's where you'll be able to support the team, because not only is that going to be the processing and setup and registration for anyone to donate to get a slot onto a team. When we get into that broadcast, you'll want to be familiar with the Open Fender website, because as soon as we go green, we'll be opening for donations to boost teams further. And again, at a certain donation number, each team's going to get a bonus lap. So there's a good chance the team that wins the race on the racetrack may not be the overall event winner, because they may not have raised as much money. The team that finished third might end up raising a little bit more. So be familiar, because that'll come in too. But like Jackson said, if you're in the area at Pittsburgh next week, if you were eyeing up the idea of maybe checking out your first Stars event, if you're at Pit Race Local, if you're in the Northeast at all, and you want to go there, hey, how about you come out to this event? It's a great way to meet and greet I know most of the paddock's going to be there. Team owners, drivers, even those not on the entry list will be there hanging out as well. Great place to network in terms of getting interest and grow, moving on into the sport. And then again, hey, if you donate to Mission for Miracles to the point that where you get onto a team where each team has a cap, they've got to raise at least $300. So with the number of spots, ends up around $100 a driver to get in, between 3 to 4 drivers on each team. But we're going to give you a pit pass and want you to come out to the race as well. So you benefit a big cause, an awesome cause that goes towards, spinal cord research and, again, fighting paralysis. And it's already had some great success stories. We're hopeful that we're going to make a dent in them and start working with them. But you can get in with the whole field. And we have OKN Stars with Brooke Nachtman with, I know Annie Rules team and Pro Stars is all locked up. Brooks already got some. Brandon Carr already has some slots only has a couple slots left on his team. Alex Stanfield, couple slots left on his team. 1 to 2 spots are left on each of the rest. Talon Yockel, I think his is already full. Josh Conker, Vincenzo Saraceno, Gavin Bailiff will still have slots, and there's no slots on the Stars team. We're just hoping that team, well, if you didn't like how the Stars officiated, you're hoping that team gets wrecked. If you like the Stars series, maybe you're hoping that team wins, but that team's a full Stars officials. That team I think I'm going to have the most fun with on the broadcast, messing with those guys.
That's going to be the best shit talking team for sure. 100%.
Oh my gosh. We're going to probably have to put one of the cameras focused on that car, because either what they're going to do damage wise on the racetrack or people are going to do to them is going to be.
We got to get the onboard for that.
Yeah. Oh, I got to get that fixed up. We got to get ready. But everyone check that out. I wanted to promote it a little bit here tonight. It's a super cool cause. It's a super cool event, and really the first of its kind in a few years, and the first of its kind in general, but the first in a few years. It's really a karting outreach event piggybacked on an event that's just going to grow, I think, and network with everybody. And that's the name of the game. So I'm super excited. Jackson, I don't know if you want to add anything more on that before we sign off, but that to me is such a cool thing to see.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and I appreciate all your support on this, Xander, and Mission for Miracles support and Open Fender. We're really excited about this with Stars, and just I can't wait to just hang out with everybody and have a good time, because I feel like we're always competing, and it's going to be cool to take what we love and try to, outreach to bring more people in and grow this sport and just have a good time doing it. So I know 3RK too, a big shout out to them. They've been super supportive and very engaged in this whole process. And when I called Daryl there, he jumped right on this. There was no questions asked. He's like, yep, we'll do it. What time do you need? What day do you need? They're donating a lot to make this happen. So a big thanks to them, and thanks to the drivers for doing this. It's going to be a blast.
Well, it should be a lot of fun. Jackson, thanks for the time, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, guys, it wraps up our show tonight. I'm a little bit unsure of next week. We'll be on the road to Pittsburgh, but this weekend we're live from Amarillo. It's going to be a big event. I think one of the biggest shifter turnouts the Texas Sprint Series is going to see. We get on the road first thing tomorrow to go live from a super revamped racetrack, thanks to Kyle Uchinsky and his whole team's hard work. That's another really good story of the community in karting getting another brand new investment. We talked a little bit about the downbeat of the West Coast. There's good parts to talk about. I try to be a positive news source because there's not enough positivity in the world. This weekend I'm super excited for, because this is a racetrack that's got a lot of positivity behind it. And next week will be fun, and our summer stretch continues. So we'll figure out when we get happy hour episode 93 in. Might be next Thursday, might be next Wednesday night if we get in, but it's a long shot to get in town in time. Either way, we'll see you guys when we're back live.